They didn't even wait for the lawyer to speak. She'd get nothing. Dad hated her. That's what my sister, Karen, said the moment I stepped into the room. No greeting, no eye contact, just that sharp, cutting sentence, loud enough for everyone to hear. The words landed in my chest like a punch. My grip on my son Eli's hand tightened, his small fingers curled back around mine, warm and trembling. I forced a thin, shaky smile down at him, but he knew. He always knew. I hadn't even taken a seat yet, but the message was clear. I wasn't welcome. I wasn't family. I was just a loose end they were here to snip. Karen sat at the head of the table, perfectly poised in a gray pantsuit. Her dark hair was scraped into that tight bun she wore when she wanted to feel superior. Her lipstick, a sharp red, was classic Karen war paint, for a battle I didn't know I'd walked into. Then came a voice I dreaded even more. My Uncle Rick, Dad's older brother, let out a dry laugh. He leaned back, fingers laced behind his head, that smug smirk of his spreading across his face like oil. Even her kid knows she's worthless, Rick muttered, nodding toward Eli, as if he wasn't even human. Eli lowered his eyes to the floor, and my heart cracked a little deeper. Around the room, a few heads nodded, my cousins, old neighbors, family friends I hadn't seen in years, people who'd long since picked sides. And I wasn't on theirs. I swallowed hard, my throat like sandpaper. The air was stale with dust, old leather, and whatever overly sweet perfume Karen had bathed in. I led Eli to the farthest chair at the end of the long mahogany table, away from the pack. The chair creaked when I sat. Eli climbed up beside me, his legs swinging, his hands folded in his lap as if trying to disappear. Karen turned her head slowly toward me. When our eyes met, she smiled, but there was no warmth in it, just pity soaked in poison. "You know this is pointless, right?" she said, her voice smooth and cold. "Dad rewrote the will. Cut you out completely, said you were dead to him." I couldn't respond. My tongue felt heavy, useless. I just nodded slightly, as if I understood. But inside, I was asking myself, why did I even come? Maybe I'd hoped for something, a note, a line, a sign he remembered me, something to make it all make sense. Instead, I was back in the one place I promised myself I'd never return to, surrounded by people who had already buried me long before they buried him. Just as I was about to stand to leave before they started carving up the estate like vultures, door creaked open. Mr. Connor, my father's lawyer, entered the room, clutching a thick folder. He looked exactly the same, neatly pressed, tired eyes, and a face that gave nothing away. The room fell silent. Everyone sat up a little straighter. This was it. I braced myself for the final humiliation. I came expecting nothing, and I'd leave with exactly that. Or so I thought. Because what no one in that room knew, not Karen, not Rick, not even me, was that my son, Eli, had brought something with him, and with one sentence, he would unravel everything they thought they knew. "You forgot the video." It had been 8 years since I'd stepped foot in a room with my family. 8 years since I packed up a life they said I didn't deserve, took a 2-year-old Eli, and left without looking back. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Every conversation with my father, Charles, ended in silence or shouting. Every family gathering felt like walking barefoot across glass while smiling for the camera. But now I was back. Back in a room that still smelled like cigar smoke and old anger. The irony was, I didn't even know I was invited to the will reading. The envelope showed up 3 days after the funeral note, just the date, time, and address in Connor's formal script. For a moment, I wondered if it was a mistake. But Eli wanted to go. He looked at me with those wide, soft eyes. His voice quiet but certain. "We should go, Mom," he said. "Maybe there's something you need to hear." I don't know how a 10-year-old can carry that kind of wisdom, but he does. Sometimes, I think he sees the world in ways most adults never learn to. So we came. I wore the plain black dress I hadn't touched since my mother's funeral. He wore a little button-up he picked himself. I braided his hair that morning with trembling hands, and he told me I looked beautiful. He didn't know I had barely slept, terrified to face the people who'd treated me like a ghost for nearly a decade. I knew what they thought of me. Karen, the perfect daughter, stayed. She helped. She took care of Dad. She made sure everyone saw her doing it, too. She told the story so many times, it became gospel. Julia abandoned the family. Julia couldn't handle real life. Julia ran away. They never asked why I left. They didn't know, or Didn't care that Dad stopped speaking to me after I refused to stay in a marriage that was tearing me apart. That when I showed up on his porch with Eli and a suitcase, he shut the door without saying a word. The one person who was supposed to protect me had become another wall I had to break through. Uncle Rick didn't help. He was Dad's echo, always, repeating the same bitter phrases. Family doesn't quit. Blood is loyalty. Don't come back crying. And Karen, she soaked it all up and turned it into a script she could weaponize. So I stopped trying. I built a quiet life for Eli and me. We didn't have much, but we had peace, love, and laughter. Still, a part of me held on to the smallest, most fragile hope that maybe in the end, Dad had seen something, regretted something, left something behind. Maybe that's why I opened the envelope. Why I showed up. But now, sitting in that room, surrounded by hard eyes and smug smiles, I felt foolish for hoping. Eli hadn't said a word since we sat down. He sat straight, hands in his lap, eyes scanning the room as if studying each face. His calm unnerved me a little, like he was waiting for something. Mr. Connor cleared his throat, the way lawyers do when they want the room's attention without actually asking for it. He adjusted his glasses, flipped open the folder, and began reading the will like it was just another Tuesday. I barely heard the first few lines, generic legal stuff. My mind was spinning, not with what he was saying, but with what I knew was coming. He wouldn't say my name. I was sure of it. Still, every time he paused to turn a page, I held my breath. Just maybe the next words would be different. But no, it was all the usual suspects. To my daughter, Karen, I leave the primary residence and all its contents. Karen's face didn't move, but I could feel her satisfaction. She glanced sideways at her husband, Neil, who gave her a smug little nod. To my brother, Rick, the lake property and all remaining shares in the family business. Rick leaned back further in his chair, chin high like a king, surveying his newly acquired kingdom. To my nephew, Paul, the vintage car collection. Paul, the cousin who once locked me out of my own room at age 9 just to watch me cry. That Paul. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep my face from cracking. I could feel the tears gathering behind my eyes, hot and sharp, but I didn't let them fall. Still no mention of me. Not even a footnote. Then came the line I'd been dreading. And as previously declared, my daughter Julia will not receive a portion of this estate. There it was. Simple, final, like a closing door. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Eli's fingers slipped into mine under the table. His touch brought me back, anchored me before I drifted too far. I could feel my heartbeat behind my eyes, my skin burned. Then came the whispers. Low, but intentional. Karen let out the softest scoff. Told you, she muttered to Neil. Uncle Rick shook his head like it was all so predictable. Takes a certain kind of person to walk away from her own father, he said, louder than he needed to. The others didn't say much, but their silence was just as loud. I stared down at the wood grain on the table, the lines twisted and spiraled, almost hypnotic. It was easier to look at that than their faces. I could hear my own voice inside my head, flat and hollow. Why did I come? Why did I think he'd remember me? But then Eli moved. He let go of my hand and sat up straighter. His voice cut through the tension like a tiny blade. Soft, but unshakable. You forgot the video. The room froze. Karen blinked. Rick turned. Mr. Connor paused, his pen still hovering over the page. I turned to Eli, confusion flooding my brain. What video? I asked, barely a whisper. But Eli wasn't looking at me. He was looking straight ahead, steady, certain. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, white envelope. It was slightly crumpled, but sealed tight. My name was on the front, and underneath it, in Dad's handwriting, were 2 words, for the lawyer. I stared at the envelope in my son's hands like it was radioactive. He held it so calmly, like it wasn't the most dangerous object in the room, but my eyes were locked on the handwriting, sharp, all caps, unmistakable. My father's. Eli, where did you get that? I barely found my voice. He looked up at me, his expression soft but steady. Grandpa gave it to me a while ago. He told me to keep it safe. My heart stuttered. He gave it to you. He nodded. The day we visited him, just me and him. You were at work. I blinked hard, trying to pull a memory into focus. I remembered that day. Eli had asked if he could go with our neighbor to drop something off at Dad's. It was the first time I'd let him go without me. I had no idea they had even spoken. Now, Mr. Connor reached across the table. "May I?" he asked gently. Eli handed the envelope over without hesitation. The entire room leaned in. Karen was squinting, as if she couldn't make sense of it. Rick shifted in his seat, no longer slouched. For once, nobody had anything to say. The envelope made a quiet tearing sound. As Connor opened it, inside was a USB drive. Small, black, ordinary. But my pulse kicked like it was a grenade. Connor furrowed his brow and pulled out another note from the envelope, also in my father's handwriting. His eyes scanned it, and for the first time since he walked into the room, his composure cracked. Just slightly, but I saw it. He didn't speak right away. He just nodded slowly, as if something unspoken had been confirmed. "Everyone," Connor said, his voice quieter now. "There is a video message from Charles Thomas, recorded before the final version of this will. It was sealed with instructions to be played only if this situation became contentious." His eyes flicked to Karen, then Rick. They both shifted in their chairs. "This is ridiculous," Karen scoffed. "He didn't say anything about a video. Uncle." Rick leaned forward, his voice harder now. "We don't know what's even on that thing. Could be fake." Connor raised a hand. "It's time." I recognized the handwriting and signature. And, per his instructions, I'm legally bound to play it. He plugged the USB into a sleek black laptop. The screen flickered to life. The logo dissolved into a black frame with a single word: play. The air in the room changed. No one spoke. No one moved. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. I gripped the arms of my chair like they might keep me from floating off into some other world. My breathing was shallow, shaky. Why would Dad leave a video? Why did Eli? What could he possibly want to say now, after everything? Eli didn't look nervous. He just sat still, eyes on the screen, as if he already knew what was coming. Karen looked pale now, her lips pressed into a tight line. Rick had stopped chewing his cigar. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream, but mostly, I wanted to know. Connor hit the spacebar. The screen went black for half a second, then flickered. And suddenly, there he was. My father, older, thinner, sitting at his desk. Wearing that navy sweater I bought him for his last birthday, the one I didn't know he'd ever worn. His hands were folded, his expression not cold, just tired. He looked straight into the camera. And then, he started to speak. I didn't breathe. Not when the screen lit up. Not when I saw his face. Not when I heard the first 3 words leave his mouth. "Hi, Julia." He looked older than I remembered. His skin had thinned. His once proud posture had softened. But it was still my father, Charles Thomas, sitting at that worn oak desk with the antique globe behind him, just like when we were kids. Only this time, his expression wasn't stern or distant. It was human. "If you're watching this," he continued, "I'm gone. And I'm guessing things didn't go well at the reading." His hands were clasped in front of him, fingers twitching slightly, a small nervous habit I had too. "I didn't expect peace between you and the family. I know what they think of you. Hell, I know what I said about you." He looked down, swallowed, and said, "And I was wrong." My breath caught in my throat. My nails dug into the armrest of my chair. Eli glanced up at me, but I couldn't look away. I believed what Karen told me. I believed Rick. I believed that you left because you didn't care. I didn't ask questions. I didn't listen to you, not once. You tried, and I shut the door in your face on you and Eli. I heard Karen shift in her chair, a sharp, uncomfortable sound. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Dad's voice cracked, just barely. "I thought being strong meant being proud. That if you walked away, it was betrayal. But strength. Strength is showing up, it's protecting your child. And you did that. You did what I couldn't." His eyes glistened, my own vision blurred. I met Eli one day when he stopped by, just the 2 of us. That kid, he didn't say much, but when I asked him about you, he just said, "My mom is the safest place in the world." My hand flew to my mouth. "I lost you, Julia. I see that now. I lost my daughter because I couldn't stop being right long enough to love you the way you needed." He cleared his throat and looked straight into the camera, steady. "So I changed the will." There was a collective gasp in the room. Someone's chair creaked. Rick's, maybe. Karen muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't hear it. I could barely hear anything but the sound of my father's voice. "I've left the house to you and Eli. The savings, the retirement fund, it's yours, and a college trust for Eli. I know it doesn't fix what I broke, But I want you to have the peace I couldn't give you when I was alive. He paused, then leaned slightly closer to the camera. And if they're angry, let them be angry. You earned this. You lived through all of it and never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed. A lump formed in my throat so big I could barely breathe. I'm proud of you. And I love you, Julia, always did. I just didn't know how to show it. And then, just before the video faded to black, he added quietly, "Take care of my grandson. Tell him, thank you." The screen went dark. No music. No transition. Just silence. Pure, still, holy silence. No one spoke when the screen went black. Not Karen, not Rick, not the cousins, or the family friends who had smiled politely while ignoring the weight I carried. Even Mr. Connor sat still, his hand frozen above the mouse, as if stopping the video had also stopped time. And maybe, in a way, it had. I don't know how long I sat there. My hand was still over my mouth, my cheeks were wet, but I hadn't noticed the tears falling until I felt Eli's hand slip into mine again. He wasn't crying. He just looked up at me with a small, knowing smile, like he'd been waiting the whole time for the truth to finally find a voice. I leaned down and kissed the top of his head. My heart ached with something too big for words: love, relief, grief, all knotted together. Across the room, Karen stood abruptly. Her chair screeched against the floor. She picked up her bag with shaking hands and walked out without a word. Her husband trailed behind, red in the face, mumbling under his breath. Rick stayed seated longer, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on nothing. When he finally stood, it looked at Connor as if he wanted to argue, but even he knew there was nothing to fight. My father had spoken. His truth was now unignorable. The others followed, one by one. Some couldn't meet my eyes. A few offered quiet nods. Pity, or maybe respect, I couldn't tell. Soon, it was just the three of us left. Connor gently closed the folder and cleared his throat. "There will be some paperwork," he said, his voice softer than before. "But everything's in order." I nodded. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? He gave a small, genuine smile and left us alone. In the room, the silence that followed wasn't the same kind I had grown used to. This silence was peaceful, whole, as if something had finally settled into place. I looked at Eli, still holding my hand, still looking at me like I was the strongest person in the world. And maybe, in his eyes, I was. But he was the one who saved me, who carried that envelope like it was just a piece of paper, not the truth that would rewrite everything. We stayed a little longer. Maybe I just needed time to breathe. Maybe I wanted to sit in the one room where, for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. I kept hearing Dad's voice in my head. "I'm proud of you." 3 words I thought I'd never hear. Words I needed more than I ever admitted. I thought about everything I'd carried: years of silence, of being blamed, of being erased. And now I wasn't erased. I was seen, heard, remembered. I looked at Eli again. "Thank you," I whispered. He tilted his head. "For what?" "For being braver than me," I said. "For holding on to something that mattered." He smiled. "I just wanted you to hear him." And I had. Not just in the video, but in the shift that came after, in the peace that filled the room once everyone else had left. That's the thing about truth: it doesn't always come when you want it, but when it does, it changes everything. So no, I didn't walk out of that room broken. I walked out holding my son's hand, with my father's words still echoing in my chest. I walked out whole. And that silence finally meant something. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been pushed aside, misjudged, or made to feel like your voice didn't matter, just know this: you are not invisible. And sometimes the truth takes time, but it will come to light. If you felt something while listening, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it, too. Stories like this only reach the people who need them most when you help them travel. And if you want more real, raw, and emotional stories just like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to tell. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, your voice matters.